Quick question. When someone says wandering graves, what is the first image that comes to mind? The wandering graves are an extraordinary phenomenon that occurred in the town of Glenysville. In 1928, people came to visit the grave of one of their loved ones and noticed that the grave had strangely disappeared. All they found was a void in place of a headstone. 70 years later, in Kansas, a grave mound sprang up overnight with a cracked headstone. The grave could never be identified because the marker was in disrepair. However, it was well filled with the remains of a corpse. No one has ever been able to explain where these graves come from and where they disappear, as they seem to grow legs and wander around. By the way, if you want to hear mysterious and unbelievable but true stories, stay until the end. I promise you that the one you have just heard is just a taste of what is to come. Women are from Venus, and Valiant Thor too. For those who have never heard of him, Valiant Thor is known by ufologists as an alien living on the planet Venus. What? Are you shocked? Thor is the commander of the ship Victor 1, and according to legend, he currently lives near Lake Mead in Nevada. These statements are confirmed by an American engineer named Phil Schneider, who says that Valiant Thor landed in Virginia in a small spacecraft in March 1957. He has the appearance of an ordinary man, but the military knew that they were dealing with an alien. However, he had a few differences, like the fact that he is presumed immortal, has 6 fingers, an enlarged heart, a giant lung, and copper oxide in his blood. That's not all. He has an IQ of 1,200, speaks hundreds of languages fluently, including his own, and has reached 500 years of age so far despite his appearance as a 25-year-old man. The purpose of his coming to Earth was to help humans lead a life based on spirituality and thus developed a plan to improve healthcare, the economy, science and technology, the judicial system, education, and management. The government kindly declined to help. Schneider would have personally met him at the famous Area 55. He claimed that Thor knew a little too much about government secrets. Worse, the people who knew about his alien origin all died in strange circumstances, including engineer Schneider. If you're wondering where he might be right now, some ufologists believe he is living in a secret shelter near Lake Mead, where he and his followers are working on a plan to save humanity. So, what do you think about this strange case? I'm from the future. Alfred Belak is an ex-military man. A future man. Anyway, this military man who participated in the Philadelphia experiment, Al Belak, claims to have traveled to 2137, where he stayed for 6 weeks, and to 2749 for 2 years. The man claims that during his time travel, he lived all kinds of experiences, and he specially learned what was going to happen to humanity in the near future. He did not come back empty-handed, as he brought very important information for humanity. According to Belak, the first changes in the world order have already begun and will extend until 2025. He also spoke about global warming and contact with extraterrestrial civilizations, the rise in the level of the world ocean, and the people who have mixed with each other. He will predict the collapse of the American infrastructure and speak of a new regime resembling an interim military government that will soon be established in the world. These events will be preceded by contact with aliens, as well as a war between the United States and Europe and between Russia and China. Well, otherwise, on a more positive note, humanity will experience several radical changes in all spheres of life, from medicine to geopolitics. And if not, these Belak, does he have any information on who will win the World Cup? A box from another world. A user of the Reddit site recently shared an amazing discovery. A strange box, seemingly from another world, was found next to a trash can. Dan opened the box to discover a mind-boggling collection of posters, illustrations, texts, maps, technical drawings, and personal effects. He then began to speculate on the origin and provenance of the box. Measuring 29 centimeters by 38 centimeters, the box contained very large numbered drawings with instructions and explanations. There were also small hand-drawn cards on a clear plastic-like material. Dan felt that the artist saw something in 1977 in Tampa that changed him. All the drawings had religious and mystical overtones mixed with hints of the paranormal. The box became even more intriguing when Dan found a very technical drawing resembling what one might see as a patent application, quite large and very detailed, a patent unlike anything seen anywhere else. Dan is thoroughly convinced that the briefcase came from another world and that those who threw it away didn't get deep enough to try to figure it out. The theories of Andrew Basiago. Between time travel, visits to Mars, and running for the US presidency, with Andrew Basiago you'll never get bored or find everyday life dull. Wait until you see what he says. This lawyer and also former candidate for the presidency of the United States in 2020 claimed to have made a small tour on Mars as part of a secret space program, of course, which, according to him, also involved the former president Barack Obama. Indeed, the man affirms that when he was a child in the 1960s, he would have participated in an alleged program of the CIA called Project Pegasus, in which he traveled in time and space. He says that he took part in another CIA project called the Mars Jump Room Program, which was part of an alleged secret space program to send people to Mars, and that he has been to the Red Planet a good 40 times. Well, when you think of all the years and the huge effort NASA put into it, conspiracy theorists who are fond of this kind of statement believe that billions of dollars are mysteriously taken out of the US Pentagon's budget every year to fund secret space projects like this one. To back up his claims, Basiago even wanted to provide the National Geographic Society with a document he personally wrote in 2008, highlighting evidence of the existence of a mass grave on the Red Planet, but which the NGS refused on the grounds that Basiago is merely a victim of pareidolia. What if Darwin was right? If you're not the type to support Darwinian theories, you may change your mind after hearing the following. In the 1930s, Charles Darwin made a series of discoveries in South America during his voyage aboard the Beagle. The scientist sent his discoveries back to England in trunks to be secured and catalogued. Among them, several are now in museums, but many of them have been put away. Indeed, it was in 2011 in an old cabinet of the British Geological Survey HiQ that was discovered by the greatest of coincidences, translucent plates containing fossil plants among those collected by Darwin. The paleontologist Howard Falcon Lang himself opened the drawers in a cabinet marked Unrecorded Fossil Plants. In these drawers, 314 polished glass slides with fossil plants that are still waiting to be studied. Why have these fossils been forgotten? It is because when Darwin sent his collection of 40-million-year-old tree fossils to his botanist colleague Joseph Hooker so that he could record and label them, but the work was not done because Hooker, working at the British Geological Survey, was forced to leave on an urgent mission to the Himalayas. The recording was not done and the plants were forgotten in the drawers. And well, one should not make very often the dust there. The missing hippie. On August 12, 1969, Rosalind Balingali, a 20-year-old university student, disappeared in a strange way in the dense forest of Knysna, South Africa. Since then, the rumors have not stopped. There has been talk of substance abuse, involvement in cults, running away, but nothing to date has confirmed anything. Rosalind was a normal student, very appreciated by her entourage, a beautiful, amazing woman loved by all. She belonged mostly to a group of hippies known as the Cosmic Butterfly, which engaged in some not so religiously correct practices, if you know what I mean, as well as some spiritual activities. Anyway, prior to her death, Rosalind had become very moody, which all of her teachers had noticed. Her friends saw that she was becoming less and less confident in herself and her acting skills. One day, some friends invited her to a retreat at a cottage in Vissenthok. To get over her depressed state, she accepts, as it is not the first time she has done so. On the morning of her disappearance, Rosalind left the cottage. Wearing a bathing suit, jeans, and sandals, with a Bible in her hand, she pretended to go for a walk, but she was never seen again. Rosalind's countless tedious searches were unfortunately never successful. We will never know what happened to her. The woman who was raised by monkeys. Her name is Marina Chapman. She was born in 1950 in Bradford, England, as this woman claims to have shared her life for a period of 5 years, maybe even 10 years, with Cebus monkeys, after she was kidnapped and abandoned in a Colombian forest in 1950s. To tell her story of being raised by the monkeys, she wrote a book with the help of her daughter and a British novelist, Lynn Barrett-Lee. Proceeds from sales would go to charity to fight child trafficking in Colombia. Marina Chapman says that she has tried to find her biological parents and has traveled to Colombia several times, but her search has been unsuccessful until now. Although the story is pleasant, it has also been very controversial by many scientists who have not hesitated to perform tests done on the woman to ensure the veracity of her words. In particular, they studied the Harry's lines found on her bones, the place in the body where the bone density is higher than the rest of the bone because of the stress of the bone visible by X-ray. These lines have the particularity of being permanent and can therefore be dated. Scientists have been able to determine that Chapman suffered from a nutritional deficiency, but is this enough to confirm her statements? We will never know. The jacuzzi of desperation. I know, it's hard for you to believe that the word jacuzzi can be linked to a danger, but in the Gulf of Mexico, a lake is named the Jacuzzi of Despair because of its high toxicity. American researchers have discovered this pool of water that is so salty, 3 times the normal level, that it is deadly to all or most organisms that venture into it. This kind of rare natural habitat is very intriguing to scientists. Eric Cordes, a professor of biology at Temple University in Philadelphia, studied the shallows of this lake located at a depth of nearly 1,000 meters, with a diameter of 34 meters to be able to unravel the mysteries of this lake. He was able to discover that the brine, which comes from the subsoil, infiltrates the Gulf through a crack in the seabed and is so high in density that it does not mix with the rest of the water in the Gulf. The video that he was able to record shows perfectly the fragility of the wall of this fatal lake, as well as the few crabs that came to die in this deadly water. The USS Kaplan. You have certainly heard of the USS Kaplan. This submarine, a ship of the United States Navy, was in service during the Second World War. During its first war patrol, it sank a Japanese freighter before heading to Darwin, Australia. She had returned with a faulty command tower hatch mechanism, very noisy bow planes, and a faulty radar tube. Once these defects were corrected, Kaplan launched her second war patrol on November 17, 1943, in the Molucca and Celebes Seas, but it strangely disappeared without leaving any trace. Some believe that this disappearance was linked to the minefields that the ship encountered on its way along the northern coast of Sulawesi. However, there is no evidence of this since no trace of the ship was ever found. But if it had been destroyed by mines, there would be clues. The Kaplan had 76 Navy men on board. Disappearing without a trace with the loss of its entire crew, the Kaplan remains at the top of the list of ships lost without known cause. The Seismic Lights. Seismic lights or earthquake lights are rare optical phenomena that appear in the atmosphere in areas where earthquakes or volcanic eruptions often occur. They take the form of lightning, flames, glowing balls, light halos, or even auroras. Although science has managed to explain several phenomena, seismic lights still remain a great mystery. These apparitions were first observed during the Matsushiro earthquake swarm in Japan, which took place from 1965 to 1967, and since then, many people link them to the UFO phenomenon. But according to other theorists, these rare luminous phenomena with various colors and shapes could result from the electrical activity of rocks. This theory highlights the electrical properties of silicon and oxygen containing minerals, but this has yet to be proven. The geoglyphs of Nazca are one of the most disconcerting mysteries of the Earth. They are drawings of gigantic geometric forms or animals, human silhouettes, sometimes even simple lines that extend on more than 450 square kilometers of sand in the middle of the Peruvian desert. These drawings, created by a pre-Inca civilization between 300 BC and 18 AD, remain an enigma until today because nobody can explain how they could be drawn so perfectly, and especially what messages they convey. Some people link these drawings to astrology, others to ufology, or still others think that these drawings have a relationship with water. Moreover, some geoglyphs run along the water, and that of the hummingbird would have the particularity to appear only in summer period after the passage of heavy rains. The researchers always try until now to detect the meaning of these drawings. The Masked Prisoner. The man in the iron mask was a prisoner incarcerated in 1669 in the Bastille and in other prisons for 30 years until his death in 1703. The mystery that surrounds him concerns his identity, because throughout his imprisonment, the man's face was hidden by an iron mask. Several theories were born about him. Voltaire thought he was the brother of Louis XIV, others thought he was Nicolas Fouquet or D'Artagnan or a lover of the Queen, or still other historians thought he was called Eustache Dauger, that he wore the mask only occasionally and that it was not made of iron but of velvet. A historical detective story, Paul Sonino, a professor of history at the University of California in Santa Barbara, argues that Dauger was a valet for the treasure of Cardinal Mazarin, who was the first French minister of Louis XIV. But the reasons why he remained masked for 30 years are still unknown. The Faces of Balmas. In 1979, the Pereira family who lived in the town of Balmas began to see strange faces in their house. Strange faces, those of men and women who disappeared and reappeared mysteriously in different parts of the house and at different times of the day. One day in August, Maria Gomez, the housewife, would have seen a face on the kitchen floor and told her husband, who broke the floor tiles, except that the same face reappeared in another place of the house sometime later. The same faces kept reappearing over the next 30 years, each time expressing different emotions. It later turned out that the house had been built over a cemetery, thus over buried bodies. Well, for the more down-to-earth, they think that these faces are artificial and that it is an optical illusion that occurs with a mosaic tile. And you, what do you think? Alchemist or not alchemist? Since 1926, the name of Fulcanelli has always been surrounded by many mysteries. That year, a mysterious volume published in a luxury edition of 300 copies by a small publishing house in Paris agitated the Parisian occult underworld. The title of the book was The Mystery of the Cathedrals, and the author was Fulcanelli. The author claimed to take a different look at French Gothic art, focusing on the interpretation of the symbolism he believed the alchemists had left in the stone. He claimed that the great secret of alchemy, the great occult science, was displayed on the walls of the Cathedral of Paris, Notre Dame, as well as other places of worship such as the Cathedral of Amiens, the Hotel L'Ailment of Bourges, or the obelisk of Villeneuve-le-Comte. But the identity of Fulcanelli has been much questioned, and no one to this day can confirm who he really was. Historians agree on the hypotheses that he was really Eugene Cancelet, but there again, nothing is really sure. The mud-spitting volcano. For you, a volcano spits lava, right? Well, not the ones in Indonesia. And don't ask me to explain it to you. Even the scientists are baffled by this phenomenon. For a few years now, the Lusi volcano in Indonesia has been spewing mud when it erupts, with mud balls reaching incredible heights in the air. Scientists can't agree on the circumstances of this mud explosion, which should normally be magma. Two groups of scientists exist. One believes the eruption is caused by a natural eruption, and the other believes it is careless drilling practices that are causing the fault near the eruption site to open up more and more. But according to a recent study published in the Journal of Geophysical Research, Solid Earth, scientists claim to have discovered a source of magma fed by a nearby volcano that is heating Lusi from below. Perhaps this explains it. The Annabelle doll. Do you know the real story that inspired the American horror movie Annabelle? In 1970, an American college student celebrated her birthday and her mother gave her a doll she had bought in an antique store. Every morning, the young girl nursed the doll and took care of it before putting it on the bed and leaving. But in the evening, when she returned, she noticed that the doll changed position and even location, knowing that no one touched it. Sometime later, more chilling events appeared. Bloodstains started to appear on the doll. Soon, this paranormal event was linked to the death of a 7-year-old girl, which took place in the same house. But it didn't stop there. One day, when a friend came to join them, a noise was heard in the empty room where the doll was. Checking to see where it was coming from, they saw that the doll was lying on the floor in the middle of the room. Immediately, the boy began to scream and bloodstains appeared on his shirt. It later turned out that Annabelle was not an ordinary doll, but some kind of evil entity. Room 428. If you were lucky enough to attend a university abroad, you must have known about this famous mysterious room that all universities in the world have and that are inaccessible to students for various reasons. Well, Ohio University is no exception. In the building, there is a room 428 and an accessible room which has been sealed off due to several reported paranormal activities which would have taken place in it. According to rumors, in the room, abnormal things would happen. People have witnessed objects moving and flying by themselves, doors opening and closing by themselves, inexplicable shadows that suddenly become visible, and so on. But the most incredible event that has been associated with this room is the appearance of a demonic face on the door. Although it has been changed many times, legend has it that it is the ghost of one of the students of the university, who took his own life in the room. In short, an ideal atmosphere for advanced studies. You have to have courage. The Ghosts of Flight 401. Eastern Airlines Flight 401 is a flight of the Eastern Airlines Company that left on the night of December 29, 1972 from New York to Miami, but unfortunately crashed in the Everglades, Florida. This accident cost the lives of 101 of the 176 people on board. Let's skip the technical details that caused the accident, because what is interesting about this case is that it was at the center of a great paranormal affair. According to rumors, Captain Bob Loft and flight engineer Don Repo, both of whom normally died in the crash, appeared about 20 times in the months following the crash on board other planes of the same Lockheed TriStar company of Eastern Airlines. Several of their relatives would have seen them furtively in uniform, although the company always denied these appearances. According to Robert Serling's book, From the Captain to the Colonel, which tells the story of this flight, it all started with a joke by a pilot after a successful emergency landing who claimed that for a moment he thought Don Repo's ghost was on board, and that the story was just a figment of the imagination of John Fuller, an author specializing in the paranormal, who in 1967 wrote The Ghost of Flight 401. The Land of Wonders. Torad. Have you ever heard of this country? It's kind of normal. This is a very unusual event that took place at Haneda Airport in Tokyo, Japan in 1954. While passengers were waiting for their papers to be checked at customs, a bearded Caucasian man was noticed by his passport, which indicated that he came from a country called Torad. No need to check on Google. This country does not exist. The most incredible thing is that the passport looks authentic. Moreover, the man seems very serious and sure of himself. He declares that he has already made dozens of trips around the world and that he does not understand why he is being arrested. When asked to explain this alleged country from nowhere, the man explained that Torad is a small country in Europe between France and Spain. To prove his good faith, he will point out the country on the map, pointing to the Principality of Andorra. The man, angry to see that the map does not indicate the real name of his country, which according to him has existed for 1,000 years, is released but remains under the surveillance of the customs in a hotel. Except that the next day the stranger has totally disappeared, while 2 men on guard have been standing outside his room all night long. There was no trace of him and no one has been able to find him since. Some people believe that he is a man coming from another universe who would have traveled in time. Now, tell us in the comments what you think about these mysterious anomalies that even science has never been able to explain, and don't forget to click here to watch another of our videos.